Hello guys, it's Bassett here, and today I want to show you a great push that you can play in ZvP matchup. That's a Hydra push that was very common a couple of years ago. Not even a couple of years ago, actually. It was common like 8 years ago, and it was pretty strong when it first appeared. Now it's not that often used, but with the current Blink Stalker meta, I think it's a really good tool to play sometimes on ladder, just to mix up with your other build orders. So the whole idea behind this build order is that you're just playing normal for the first couple of minutes in the game, and I'm gonna give you the full description of this build order, every single timing, supply, and so on. For now, let's just speed up this game a little bit. You would like to open normally as if you are playing a proper macro game, and the first condition for this build order to work is that you have to establish the fact that your opponent Protoss is playing a normal game himself, meaning he's opening with the gateway, he's going for the Nexus, and he's also playing the Cybernetics. This thing works best against Stargate, and I would say it's like the best case scenario, and this is also like the most common build order that Protoss race has right now. So the goal here, you're just building drones, you're just playing normal, you will be taking your 240 Hatchery, and with your first Overlord you get a scout, their tech choice, right? So normally every single Protoss player goes for Adept first. Sometimes they go for the Stalker, but they usually go for the Stalker when they're trying to hide something from you, and that would usually be not a Stargate, because, well, Stargate is pretty common, it's not that dangerous, it doesn't really have that push value, right? They usually build one Oracle for scouting, and so in that case I just fly straight into the main base. You can see there is one pylon, and at that timing Protoss player needs the second pylon, and it has to be somewhere here. Usually it's on the main base, you can see it's right there. If you don't see the second pylon, it could be a proxy, or maybe you just scouted poorly. Sometimes they want to hide that somewhere, but normally it will be around the main base or maybe this natural base. So just look for the second pylon, and then you'll find the next tech building. If they build a Stalker, they might be able to chase your Overlord, and they might be able to strike it down, but that usually means if you establish that there is a pylon on the main, then okay, maybe there is no this target, but it means that they just put it in the wall. Sometimes it could be the case. So nevertheless, you go for that scouting, and around that time I need to confirm that this is a Stargate. I see it, and this is usually a green flag, and it's a good sign that you can proceed to play the Hydra push. So what you're gonna do now is you just build drones until you have 50, or maybe not 50, I think yeah, around 54 workers. Yeah, that would be like a great number. You can go for like a little bit less, 52, maybe a little bit more, 56, but should be around that, meaning that you have 3 mineral bases saturated fully, and you also want to have at least 4 gases. How many workers you're gonna have depends on how well you defend against the Oracle push, and usually you need like 4 queens for that. 3 queens are gonna be used for injections, and 1 queen is gonna be doing the creep spread and just protecting you from the Oracle in the beginning. The very best execution is when you try to minimize the number of links that you build in the early game, because the less links you build, the more workers you'll be able to produce in the quickest time possible. So if you see that nothing is really threatening you, if you see that nothing is happening, if there are like 4 or 5 adepts, then just build drones for the majority of the game. And around 3:20 you have to pull your workers back to the extractor, and I will be doing exactly this thing in about a moment or so. After that, you just keep on droning, and let me just speed this game up a bit, and I would say around 4:20, minute 4:20, you would like to start your lair. That would be like the perfect timing, because around that time you should have a solid 40 drone economy. You should be able to establish the spores around every base, and this is going to be a good scenario for you. Now, the second most important timing that you still have to remember about is the Twilight. Sometimes some Protoss players would place the Twilight just right after they build the first target, so the Twilight would be about 340, 350, something like that. This can mean one thing, they just want to go for the glaive push, and this is going to be really tricky for you, because against glaives you would like to have something else than just pure lings and hydras, because adepts are great against both of those light units. So you would like to have a Bayonetic Nest, maybe Roach Warren, it's up to you really. But that's like the only thing that can straight up kill you. If he's placing a normal Twilight around that time, around like minute 4, and you can see that he's not boosting anything. In this game I don't see it actually, but I think I'm pretty comfortable because I saw the second Oracle or something like that. At least I'm gonna see it in a moment. So I was just playing this build order even without like scouting, and to be honest, the Hydra Push just counters pretty much everything that Protoss has. So you don't have to worry about anything except for that glaive timing. So that's the only thing you can check. With this game, he built the second Stalker, so I was not able to secure that information. But if you're just feeling a bit scared, you can just put down the Bayonetic Nest. It's not gonna hurt you much because it's kind of cheap, and you would be fine. And you can see here, I'm just droning more and more and more. I'm gonna speed up this once again. And about this time, when you have around 50 workers, you can start adding your gases. Make sure to add them on the third base, because this base is going to be scouted a bit more, and you can ignore the gas here. You can add 2 gases here, but usually you need only 4, because you will spend more minerals than gas, and you just need more minerals and just good injections overall. And here is the important part about this build order. So nowadays, in current StarCraft 2 meta, most of the Zerg players, they prefer to play Hydra into Lurkers, into Hive, and then the late game. So if your Protoss opponent sees the Hydra, then he's not going to be reacting crazy to that, at least until he sees that you lack gases on your bases, right? So the best way to trick your Protoss opponent into thinking that you are playing a normal game with Lurkers and Hydras and that's not going to be a push is by placing the 4 Hatchery like this. And when you place your Hatchery like this means that if he scouts that, he's going to assume that you're probably going to go for macro. Maybe you're just delaying your gas timings a bit, maybe you're just being a bit sloppy, it doesn't really matter. But 4 hatch is a sign of relief for most Protoss players, because they see, okay, so this Zerg is committing quite a lot to some economy structures and so on. And you also need this 4 hatchery because you're going to be making lots of lings, and you would like to have a decent amount of larvae available. As soon as you have your layer finished, you just start your Hydra then, and you can also have a +1 upgrade either on range or melee. Range would be more preferable here because you also want to go for Lurkers in case your push just doesn't work. And you also want to scout him a little bit with your links to see what's going on here, because sometimes you might be able to face in like a quick timing push from your opponent. So for example, in this game, my opponent went for +1 upgrade, and he also went for quite early Templar Archives. But some Protoss players, they just prefer to go for mass Blink Stalkers, and in that case, it would be better for you to stay on creep than to go across the map and face him, you know, around his base. That would be just easier for you to defend and then just counterattack. So I see that he's adding the gases, and this is a good sign, and usually it means that he's gonna go one way or another into like some kind of tech path. In this case, it's Templars, could have been Immortals. It's fine, really. And after that, you just, when you have 50-50, like 56, 57, maybe 54, you just build Lings and Hydras. Make sure to build Hydras first. You need like about 10 to 15 to 20, depending on how much money you have, on how well you defended in the early game. You have to queue up the upgrades. I would say range is more important. Speed is kind of good as well, but if you have like a decent creep spread, it's not that big, but range is absolutely massive in this scenario. And you can see in this game I'm a bit late with that because I was distracted by the oracles. The guy's actually doing a great job here. He killed 6 in that particular game. And after you build your first 15 Hydras, you normally reinforce with like almost pure links, and that should be enough. Now let's see how combat goes. That's a pretty important part of that guide as well. So your goal here is to try and detect the least defended point, right? And in this particular situation, it's not going to be the third base. Third base, most of the time, is the worst place to attack your Protoss opponent, because you can see here he has already 2 cannons, he also has a full shield battery, and even though I still have, I believe, enough forces to overwhelm that, that is not the best place to attack, so most of the time you would aim for the second base. Here it goes like this. Usually you can just go in with a couple of hydras and lings, and you wanna threaten this pylon to just unpower the gates and unpower the cybernetics core. Sometimes there would be a robo as well, and then you just go for the probes. And if he's not really defending that well, you can just focus down this base and just clean it, right? If he stays on 3 bases, that's all right. I mean, if he holds this base, but he only has like main and this base, you're still gonna be in a very, very good spot. And make sure that every time you fight, you have lings around hydras, and you have to pull the lings back when they are just out of reach, especially when the stalkers are out of reach of the hydras, right? You want to attack at the same time with every single unit you have. If you have like some spare microcontrol, if you're really playing, if you're playing StarCraft 2 at a high level, you can also target every single unit with hydras. That is also quite good to do, but in general, you can just aim move and that should be fine. And you can see like every time my forces spread out, I just want to clump them up together because it's very, very risky. You have to make sure that you're not losing the hydras. This is the most important unit. And that's why you're also reinforcing with lings. You can afford to lose some lings, it's okay, but hydras almost never. And in that case, you just keep on fighting. And in most scenarios, it's very, very hard for Protoss to beat if they did not realize this was going to be like a timing push, because they prepare for something else, and in most cases they will not have enough forces to defend against that. The only big thing is going to be the storms, but usually this timing push arrives a bit earlier than the storm is done, so you should be able to dodge that. And if he's going for like high Templars, he's not going to have enough forces to defend against that. And the main goal here is to just protect your hydras and fight with lings altogether. So this game ended very well for me. I was just cleaning up the second base. You can see he's not mining, so even if he for some reason manages to defend that push, at least I did some economic damage, and I have old attack, and I also have a robust economy to switch into something else. So in my case, that could have been lurkers or banelings, doesn't really matter. So if you see that, okay, so for some reason you are not able to break him, you can just go banelings or lurkers, and you can also drone up until like maybe 70 workers, add some extra gas at the 5th base, and then you can proceed to play a normal macro game after doing some damage. But normally, I would suggest that you should just destroy your Protoss opponent. It's also good to target down the cybernetics core if he's playing Blink Stalkers, because when they are playing Blink Stalkers, they usually have the Zillo charge quite late, and you can force him to make Zillos, which don't have the upgrade, and they are quite useless without the upgrade against Hydras and Lings. And here you can see I'm just cleaning everything up, and I'm just gonna destroy his building, the base. And now we're gonna show you another game where I played against a much better opponent and how it can go wrong. So here is a different game when I was facing Felix. That's a very top tier NA player, and here is another version of the same build order that can be really strong as well. And I would say I like this version a little bit more, but it also has some drawbacks. So let me just get straight to it. So the starting point is just similar. You just build up, you just drone, and that's pretty much the normal macro build order until minute 320 or like 250, something close to that. Depends on what you do. So here you just defend, you play normal, you scout the Stargate, you defend against the adepts. It's you know, all the basics, yada yada. And around 310 you put down the evolution chamber. So compared to the previous build order, the goal here is to add your workers back to the extractor slightly earlier, maybe like around minute 3, and then you just want to go for the +1 melee. What it does, it allows you to defend just easier against adept pushes, which could be devastating, as I said before, and it also allows you to transition into banelings later on, and it's just a bit nicer. Like your punch is going to be a bit more difficult to defend against. The problem is that because you build this extra like 100 gas on the upgrade, you spend that, your layer is going to be also slightly later in some cases, and you also like waste a couple of resources in the early stage when you really need that to expand your economy. So it is a really good thing if your opponent is not doing enough economy damage in this game. That's not the case, of course. Like, he is gonna kill a couple of drones with the adepts, and that was like not a perfect start for me. But overall, I think it's a good build order if you wanna focus more on like pushing with your links and just transitioning out of it if you want to. So you queue the melee upgrade, and by the time you attack your opponent, it's gonna be really, really good. Also, it works really well if you're playing against stalker pushes. Like, if your opponent is gonna go for, let's say, if he's gonna go for mass stalkers like 7-8 gates, this is also a very neat upgrade. It also works really well against any kind of zealot pushes. If he's going like 7-gate zealots after that, after the Stargate, it also gives you like a sort of protection against any kind of Protoss cheese. In this game, for example, you can see that he's going for Glaives. That's what I was talking about. And you can see that considering the timing, even if I didn't go for the Evolution Chamber, my Hydralics then would have been still quite late to defend against the Adepts, and I have nothing but Lings. Could have had Banelings, but it's not the case. But I'm gonna have the upgrade very soon, so the goal here is just to defend with mass Lings, and then you can also proceed to counterattack him, and +1 Lings, they usually deal very, very well against the Adepts, and that's the point of this upgrade as well. Here it arrives really, really early, but normally until like the Grandmaster League, it's not gonna be the case for most Protoss players, and with enough Lings you can defend that really, really well. And in this case, my opponent decided not to commit to like Adept push, and he decided to divert into probes and like a normal macro game. But in some cases, some Protoss players, they just like to cheese with like only Adepts, and that would be it for the game. And in that case, of course, the upgrade plays a huge role, and that's why you pretty much need it. They also need it for future counterattacks as well, for the future timing. So you can see I defend here, and after you're done, you just, if you're losing some drones, you gotta rebuild them. You gotta keep that drone count about 50. That's the most important part. And I'm gonna go for the push just as I did at the previous game. But here, there is like a big difference. I lost quite a bit more workers. I lost 10, and that could be like problematic, especially against some aggressive playstyles. When playing against mass stalkers and adepts, it could be a bit tricky because usually this upgrade and also like this timing works really, really well against players who are like more passive and who commit to technology, you know, who are playing Immortals, Archons, Templars, Colossi, Disruptors. Even though like Colossi, Disruptors in theory are quite good against Hydra Push, the problem is that he's gonna only have like one Colossi and you can just overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Here though, it's a bit tougher because the Protoss player just has a lot of Stalkers, and if he has a decent enough micro, he can actually outplay that. The thing is, there are like only a few Protoss players who have decent enough micro to outplay this, so if you're playing in Masters or Diamond or Plat League, it's not gonna happen in most cases. So the goal here is to try to surround his army with Lings and then just proceed with Hydras. Against this kind of playstyle, you wanna slowly build up your Hydra count, and in some cases, if he is not really building any kind of tech, it could be like quite good, and it could be really, really wise and clever to transition into lurkers and a proper macro game. So in that game, I would be committing 100% to actually trying to kill him, but you can see that this is probably not the best scenario if it didn't work for the first time. So I can see here he has a decent chunk of Stalkers, and at that point I realized that he is already committing to this, he's not making anything else, and it's probably like a good time to just keep building Hydras, but also transition into worker production, drone up your 4th base, while also defending on creep and trying to battle with Stalkers. And you can see we have a pretty similar resources lost, but as for Zerg, that's not like an ideal situation because you want to have a better economy, and in that case, against pure Stalkers, it's not really feasible. But the problem here is that this guy also has a perfect micro, and he's not really losing that many units, and that's why he's doing it so well. But I guess against like an average master, or even like an average grandmaster player, not like top grandmaster, that would be not possible, to be honest, because Hydras in 1v1 battle against like Stalkers and just in big numbers, usually Hydras outperform Stalkers by quite a bit. And even you can see at the resource loss tab, he's trading just slightly worse, but he can afford that because he has the 4th base, while I lost like 10 workers before, so that's not really working out for me anymore. So in that situation, the best case would be to go for +1 on your range. I only had melee, and +1 on range would be like a good addition to that Hydra number. And you can also try to drone up a little bit, maybe add some Infestors to catch the Stalkers, and in the late game you just add Lurkers and then you play a normal game. So that is like a very good response from the Protoss player. And if you are playing as Protoss and you wanna just defend against this Hydra push, you just need to scout that, and you need to make sure that you control the ramps, because that's the most important point. You maybe want to build some sentries, and you also need shield batteries and cannons at each base. Maybe like one shield here, one shield battery here, and maybe one cannon as well. But the most important part is scouting. As a Protoss player, you can scout that by looking at the gases, because normally at minute 6 or 7, Zerg player is supposed to have full gases in the majority of cases, like unless he's going for some crazy all-in, that should be the rule. So, and this game, I think you don't really have to watch it till the end, but basically we were trading back and forth all the time, but I couldn't win this game because I was building like pure hydras and lings, and even though the trades were kind of okay for me, as a Zerg, you would like a different path for the late game. And the moment the Protoss player managed to reach to the storm, he managed to build the storm, the game was pretty much lost for me, because yeah, like you can trade well, but when he gets to the AoE damage, that's pretty much impossible. Even though I managed to catch his army here, I did like some decent damage, but it doesn't really matter, because with the storm it's quite tough. The only way you can play it differently, if you're in such a situation and, you know, sometimes you're just kind of afraid to go for like tech, you're kind of afraid to go for drones because you might just lose your head-on battle, right? There might be just too many stalkers and you're not feeling sure about droning up. In that case, you might go for some run-bys. That could also work, but the problem with this playstyle is that they often have the cannon, the warpins, they have like plenty of gates, so it's also not really feasible. But sometimes you can go for the natural wall, because a lot of Protoss players, when they play with this particular playstyle, they sometimes move with F2 key, they just move the whole army, and you can go past that zealot and just do some damage here. That would be like a good thing to do, but it depends on how Protoss player reacts, because some do hold the ground, some do not, so it depends. And the game ends like this, I just lose the fight and it's GG. So thank you for watching, guys. Subscribe for more StarCraft 2 content and StarCraft 2 guides. I'll give you the full build order in the description. Thank you for watching, have a good day, and I'll see you next time.